Welcome to the Living with LHON panel session of UMDF Mitochondrial Medicine 2021. I'm Lissa Pointsnow, LHON Program Chair and UMDF Ambassador. This session is moderated by Maria Johnson, also known as Girl Gone Blind, a speaker, blogger, and advocate. This session is brought to you thanks to our generous sponsors. Before we begin, a few things to keep in mind. Please turn off your video camera and mute your microphone upon entry. During the panel, we ask that you keep your video camera off and remain muted. We encourage you to post questions in the chat throughout the panel session. Following the panel, there will be a live Q&A where you may turn your camera on if you wish. We ask that you remain muted and use the raise hand feature to indicate that you'd like to ask a question. We will respond to questions in the chat and/or during the live Q&A as time allows. Maria has assembled a great group of panelists who have experienced living with LHON in their own unique and interesting ways. So let's get started.
Welcome everyone to the 2021 Living with LHON panel. My name is Maria Johnson and I will be your moderator today. We've gathered some wonderful people to share their LHON journey, their LHON story with you, as we've done in conferences in the past. We have selected people who are affected. We've selected people who are couples today to share what they've gone through, what they've learned, the highs, the lows, the good times, the bad times, when it comes to being diagnosed with LHON. So today we're going to start with a young man who lives in Shawnee, Kansas. His name is Chaz Quinn, and he was diagnosed in April of 2020. So he's fairly new to this whole thing. And Chaz, please tell us your Living with LHON story.
You bet. Thanks, Maria. As Maria mentioned, my name's Chaz Quinn, live in Shawnee, Kansas. My wife's name's Mandy, and we got a little 17-month-old little boy named Cade. We just recently moved here from the Texas Panhandle. My journey with LHON actually began in October of 2019. From what I understand, my story is quite unique, as I wasn't losing vision when it all started. I wasn't having issues with my eyes. I just went for an annual optometrist appointment, and she saw a swollen optic nerve at my appointment and really didn't like what she was seeing with my eyes from pictures she saw. And then I went to ophthalmologist and several appointments there, and he wasn't sure what was going on, and he was going to send me to a retina specialist. And they said, no, that's probably not for us. You better send me to the neuro ophthalmologist. So finally made it to the neuro after 2 or 3 months of all that. And within about a month and a half, 2 months, and 3 or 4 appointments with him, he said it's got to be something called LHON. And of course, we didn't have a clue what it was, anything like that. We did he did the test, and it was the middle to end of February, somewhere around there, and we got the results that I have mutation 11778 in April 13th of 2020. So in that time, I got to say my wife's been great through this whole process. She's done a lot of research, and she's throwing things at me, and sometimes like, you got to slow down a minute. So when it all happened, I went from 2020 to 2200 from October to February in my left eye. So I'm still driving at the time since my right eye was unaffected, and making it through 2020. And I guess I must add, my wife was she was pregnant at the time in October. And so the last thing on my worry was trying to figure out, what's going on with myself. I had a wife and who was pregnant, and we're having a little boy. We're hearing that he's healthy and everything's going good there. So, as a new dad, that's your most concern, is your wife and little boy. And so that all came out good. He was actually born on my birthday in January. And then it was like, okay, your eyes are really getting bad. Nothing's getting better. Because, typical thing for, just guys mostly, oh, it's all going to be fine. You're going to make it through it. It's just, your eyes are just doing something crazy. It'll get better. Well, sure enough, my left eye, there wasn't no improvement in it. But So we start learning what LHON is and how it affects you, where it starts in the body. And so I started talking with my parents and decided, my mom was adopted. And this is when we found her biological parents, learned that there is a history of LHON in the family, and that it's there, and they knew it was there, but we didn't know them my whole life and lived within 20 miles of both my biological grandparents. So got to learn about that from my mom talking to her mom, and fast forward to make it through the summer, new dad, just facing life's obstacles of being a dad. And then my wife got a promotion with her company to move to Shawnee, Kansas. I'm like, oh goodness. So here we go, having to find new doctors, figure out what we're going to do about that. And as big as the Kansas City metro is, there's only 2 neuros here. So found a good doctor here that we're really enjoying working with. And he was very familiar with LHON from studying at Bascom Palmer. And so that's been a great relationship we've got to build with him. And in, I guess, December of 2020 is when my right eye started to go. And really didn't know how that was going to happen or what we were going to do. And from the time we moved, or from the time my right eye became affected to February of 2020, it had finally caught up to my right eye, or to my left eye, excuse me. And then, that's when I got told that I couldn't drive no longer, was February of this year. So I haven't drove in almost 4 months. And it's been a little bit of an obstacle. It's been a good move for us moving to Shawnee. We live about 5 miles from where I work. My wife works from home, so she just runs me to the office and then picks me up in the afternoons. And we're just steadily making it through this journey. One thing I can say about LHON is, it may seem like there's going to be a lot of bad days, and and there's some discouragement. Don't let it discourage you. One thing we quickly learned is the LHON community is one of the most supportive groups that you could be involved with. There's many people that have stories, and everyone's story is different, but it's all very enjoyable getting to learn everyone and where they're at and what they're doing and how they're navigating through life. And the people on this panel and just everyone that's there, one of the best support groups that you could find.
Thank you, Chaz. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. From the day I learned I had LHON, stepping into the community was, one of the best things that I could have done for myself and my family. So I would agree with you with that. I couldn't have gotten through some of the early times, and even still today, without having the LHON community there, and not only for yourself but for your spouse. And it's really it's a family affair, if you will. And I love the fact that your mom found her biological family because of this, and I've heard of that with other people in the community. And I bet that was pretty special for your mom. And your grandparents, you said, only lived 20 minutes away.
Yeah,
The
pretty
biological.
close. It was I don't know if she was, I think she was more nervous than anything, trying to meet them and talk to someone that she knew, put her up for adoption for good reason. But I think she's enjoyed getting to know them and learn a little bit more about the family. But
Yeah.
I think I was grateful for it more for her health concerns and just learning health history within the family.
Right. So if there's a history, so there's other people now, in your family line that are affected with LHON.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So, that's kind of, at least, now, it's in the family. So you're pretty, sure that that's what it was. But I have heard of other stories about how adopted parents or family members do find their biological family, and they have to let that family know, oh, hey, this is what's going on. But in your case, they went, oh yeah, we know all about it. So a little different twist there. But thank you so much for sharing, Chaz. It's been great to get to know you through the process of putting this panel together, and I appreciate you sharing your living with LHON story. So thank you so much. And one other thing, your wife writes a blog. What's the name of her blog?
Oh, you would ask me that question.
Oh,
I think it's with Love and Grace or something like that. I'd have to get it if anyone's ever interested. But
yeah,
when she started that blog, it was more of, hey, I'm just going to start blogging. Her hobbies is cooking and just she enjoys being in the kitchen. That's her hobby, and she is
yeah,
going to blog about things she's doing, tricks she's learning with cooking, and next thing you know, I'm affected with Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, and she's like, well, I guess I have something else to add to the blog because it sounds like this is something that's very unknown, and so she's added a little bit of that. She hadn't got to blog as much as she liked because, of course, she's a full-time mom and a full-time employee, so
yeah,
she
yeah.
sleeps when she can. So,
That's a handful. That's a handful. But the reason I mentioned is because she has written about your journey with LHON from a, spouse perspective, which I think is interesting. So I wanted just to make sure that was out there in case anyone's interested in heading over to that. They can certainly contact you and get the name. But thank you again, Chaz. We're going to move along. Our next panelist is Megan Davidson. She lives in Fairhaven, New Jersey, and she was affected in March of 2019. So Megan, please tell us about your LHON story.
Thanks, Maria, and thank you to Lissa and the UMDF for hosting this every year. I do have to say that when I was first diagnosed, I would marathon these conferences, and especially the patient panel. So I really appreciate being involved this year. And sorry if I get too close to the screen. Everybody knows that we all kind of kiss the screen. So if I'm too close, tell me to back off, please. So I was first noticing my vision loss December 2018. Just noticed a little smudge, and like any other female who is the first and only to be affected in their lineage, the diagnosis process is confusing and frustrating. So MRIs, spinal taps, high-dose steroids, and then finally when my second eye was affected, we did an emergency plasmapheresis because I thought they were going to save my vision if it was autoimmune related. And then with that hospital stay, there was also other MRIs and PET CT scans and all of that. So that was fun. The doctor actually came into my hospital room when I was going through the plasmapheresis and said, Meg, we ruled out everything else. There's only something left called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, and we really hope you don't have that because there's no treatment. And there's treatment for everything else. He also kind of said, Meg, don't Google this because we don't want to cause you distress. So great words, doctor.
Yeah.
And I just kind of kept going. I was actually conducting conference calls. I was working through my diagnosis in my hospital room, which was probably frowned upon, but needed to stay busy. So I got diagnosed with the gene mutation 11778 on March 27th, 2019. So my diagnosis process was pretty short, actually, but with a female, there's a little bit more to it, and it's not just assumed right off the bat that it's LHON. So with that call of the diagnosis, they also said, Meg, we can't do anything else for you. So we set up an emergency genetic counseling mutation or counseling appointment for you and your husband. Please make that. And I also go to the Lighthouse for the Blind. We were living in San Francisco at the time. So did all of those appointments. I went to the Lighthouse. I walked down those halls. I saw those canes and I said, this is not me. I shouldn't be here, and why am I here? But I got an intro of Zoom text and JAWS. Took that in and then went home, went back to work. I started zooming my screen for work, just using the Microsoft functionality that's innate to Microsoft, and also use their read aloud technology to read documents and emails and all that. And I said, I can get by with this. I'm totally fine. And then my vision dropped really drastically within 6 to 9 months after that time frame. So I panicked and I said, I love my job. I want to keep my job. I remember the Lighthouse saying, most people who are visually impaired are on disability. And we don't have kids, and with the genetic counselor, they told us and advised us not to have children just because I will pass that gene. And I need a purpose. And also we have a mortgage and I need to help pay. So that kind of started our firestorm of activity. My husband saw, he's been amazing through all of this, you know, stayed with me in the hospital, made sure I had meals when I was there, but then also, you know, just figures out the best. He's a consultant, so he figures out how to fix. But he said, we need to move back to the East Coast and move to New Jersey and be close to your family because we're going to need support through this. So he put our house on the market. At the same time, I said, I need my Zoom text and JAWS training. So I got that, I got my licenses, but then I really had to come clean to my company. They knew something was going on. And I had to tell them kind of my fate, and they were shocked. And they provided, you know, whatever I needed in terms of hardware to support the software that I needed. And they also supported me in my ways of telling people about my new ways of working. So I was working from home through this. So before I lost my vision, I was working from home. That was a huge blessing because I could be, as I said, kissing my screen with my nose, but my font would be 4 inches big, and I wasn't self-conscious. I was still doing. And actually, I'm a project manager. I work for one of the largest beverage distributors in North America, starting one of the largest projects of my career, and I was going to tell people on my own time. So didn't want to tell people right off the bat, didn't want to be prejudged or have my work prejudged, but then I didn't let it go too far, and I let people know eventually, just to, you know, not cause any mistrust in the future, not say, hey, why didn't she tell me? Like, she did a good job. So I got through that project, I got my annual review, and I actually received an exceeds expectations as my rating. And they usually don't give that out. So I said, okay, well, is this a charity rating for my year? And they said, no, Meg, you know, you succeeded at that project, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you, you know, within budget, within time frame, all of that. And then also my company featured me in an employee spotlight and just kind of talked through my journey and talked through my positivity and drive and all of that. So a lot of pats on the back that I wasn't expecting to receive, because I thought, okay, well, I just need to keep doing this task, and I kept overcoming every single hurdle, basically. So yeah, that's me. I kept working. What do I do besides work? I love to cook, but the kitchen is definitely a minefield for the visually impaired. If there's a clear glass, I'm going to break it. So my mother-in-law found some, you know, cobalt blue drinking glasses for me. So that was a great gift. And the rule in our kitchen is it's a blind girl kitchen. Don't rearrange things. I'm not going to find them. I'm going to think they're gone. If you're loading my dishwasher, please load them utensil side down, because if I'm unloading, I'm going to have to touch tap to unload that when nobody else is there. And I actually got one of those spice racks that list all of the spices on uniform jars. I never thought I would have that, but it's actually easier to find things instead of, you know, calling across the house for my husband or calling Ira to have them read stuff to me. I actually made Sunday supper like 3 weeks ago for my family. Did a chicken satay marinade, did a diced cucumber salad with like a spicy peanut dressing, was so happy with myself. And my mom brought over shrimp cocktail. I was so you know, I was hungry. I was cooking all day. I dove into that, and what did I grab but the lemon, and bit into that lemon. So it's moments like that where you're having such a great day, and then you have those defeating moments. So, you know, LHON is just a mixed bag. You know, you definitely live your best life and do what you want to do, but then you have those moments as well. And I guess, you know, kind of to wrap that up really quickly, is to my sighted supporters, we've been such a great team. I mean, my husband, my parents, my in-laws, my friends, you know, my extended family, we let me still be me and still do what I need to do, but we also let me fail. And that's one of the best things that could happen. One of my biggest failures is going to the grocery store, whether it be walking in and just having a moment of panic and being like, okay, I could see this a couple weeks ago, can't see it now. Or just having full tears and then having to hand off my list written in Crayola marker to my husband or my mom and saying, I'm going to go in the car if I can find that car, and you need to figure this list out for me. So it's figuring out just the best ways of working and where you thrive, because we all just do the same things. We don't drive. Driverless cars are coming, and it's on my list. But you know, as I kind of said before, I just take every task at a time and just get through every little thing, and you realize that you do the same things as you did when you were fully sighted. So that's kind of my long and short of it. But thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you so much, Megan. I can relate to so much of what you said. You know, the way I solve the kitchen problem is I just don't cook. So I'm totally opposite of you, but I agree with you. You can be going along, just killing it. And then it takes one little thing to kind of ruin the whole moment, such as the lemon in the cocktail sauce or the pat of butter that still had the foil on it, things like that. And I absolutely admire your tenacity and your motivation to make this career work for you. So many people think I can't work and they quit. And we now know, and people learn, that's not the answer. There's so much technology out there, and employers are willing to help, and actually they have to help you maintain your career, or at least make accommodations so that you can stick to what you were doing, or at least something very similar. So I thank you so much. You said a lot of great things, and I really appreciate you sharing so much. And it's true. Times are good, times are bad, times are easy, times get hard, and we just keep going one task at a time, as you said, and learn to do it better or a different way the next time if it doesn't work out. So thank you so much. We are going to move on to our next speaker. He is Blake Steineke from San Diego, California, and he has been affected since October of 2015. So Blake, take it away and tell us your Living with LHON story.
Sounds great. Thank you, Maria. So my name's Blake Steineke. I'm from San Diego, California. I've lived in San Marcos, which is a city in North County, San Diego, my whole life. And yeah, I grew up with perfect vision and just had an amazing childhood, just defined by sports and so many amazing different things that I did. And right before my junior year of high school, when I was 16, I started to notice slight vision loss in one of my eyes. And, I thought it was nothing, but just was like, should be good to go get it checked out. Went to the doctor and very quickly was referred to a neuro-ophthalmologist and did the whole slew of tests that most people do. And during that time, my vision in one eye just kept getting worse. And in October-ish of 2015, my first semester of my junior year of high school, I was diagnosed with LHON. And in that moment, I still had good vision overall. And I, like many people could relate, I was just kind of struck with a lot of questions, and not in really like depressing way, just, just think through, how am I going to stay in school? Could I go to college? Could I keep playing sports that I play? Could I, would someone want to be in a relationship with me? Could I get married? All these things just ran through my head. And I think I was thankful for the people around me that quickly showed me that I could keep up doing these things. I would just have to do it a different way. And then in the coming months, in my second semester of my junior year of high school, in around like February, March, my other eye got involved, and both eyes progressed worse for about a year. So I lost, my vision loss happened kind of between junior and senior years of high school. And so during those times, it's, very, very important time of year or time of life that kind of sets you up for where you're going, and didn't want to slow down at all. And kept up competitively in school, finished very well in high school, and continued to go to college. at Cal State San Marcos, where I live. And, college was definitely an incredibly hard journey. It was interesting going from a place where everyone knew me growing up in high school. They knew the sighted Blake and then the blind Blake, for lack of better words. Um, and it was interesting going to college where no one knew me for that. And I was a little more, I don't know, more cut off from certain help and resources. Like didn't have my TVI or teacher for the vision impaired, certain things. And I learned a ton and had great support that I really leaned into at our disability support services office. Um, and just really got super duper uncomfortable, which is something I think we all have to get used to, just being uncomfortable, um, just embracing the awkward as so much of the time. And was able to graduate a semester early. So graduated in 3.5 years with my degree in marketing and my minor in Spanish, which was awesome to be able to do, and graduated with a 3.75 or 77 something GPA. And it was so hard, but like I was proud I did it well. And I got the outstanding marketing student award just for the top performing, just all around student in the marketing department with academic accomplishments and things outside of school. So that was quite an honor. And as just with how challenging school can be. And while I was in school, I did a variety of marketing internships to make sure I could prepare myself to work, as that's why I was in school. And now I'm working for a company called Tasco, and they make mountain biking gear and lifestyle apparel. So all pretty much all the gear that you ride in. And I've always had a passion for mountain biking, and now it's amazing to be working for one and working in industry that I'm passionate about, and getting great working experience. It just, it's an amazing feeling. And just seeing the meaning for all like the hardship of going through school and all that came with it. And then also personally, like sports are such a huge passion of mine, and especially hockey. I thought I was definitely done playing hockey when my vision loss happened. And then I heard about blind hockey, and I was very skeptical because, I didn't want to play sports with people who had a disability, and that was just the stereotypes I had. But there was an event not too far away, so I decided to go to it. And long story short, I tried it out and fell in love with the game. And I very quickly realized that it had the adaptations that I needed to keep playing, such as a bigger puck that made noise, yellow and black jerseys for each team for high contrast, and incorporating all levels of vision loss to just make the game continue to work. And in that place, I found many people similar to my situation who grew up playing hockey and then lost their vision. But more importantly, I found a community of people that really raised the bar for what was possible. Because I think when your vision loss happens, you quickly lower the bar for what you're capable of doing. But I was surrounded by people that raised the bar higher than I had the bar set for my life before my vision loss. And I think you should set the bar higher, because what vision loss will take a lot of things from your life, but it gives limitations that I think should be leaned into, and it grows your character in ways that will help you achieve more than you ever could before. Because maybe there's physical things we can't do, but there's things that everybody can't do, and we just don't always point those out in people. But I think we should, know our limitations, but also know that what you gain in your character will help you achieve far more than what vision will help you do in your life. And it's just been an amazing experience to keep playing hockey, and to play on the US blind hockey team, and to represent my country and play at an elite level, but also be able to grow the sport to more blind and visually impaired people, continuing to do so around the world. Is an amazing thing, just to have that impact that a sport can provide. Uh, and I think my vision loss just has helped me just grow so much determination to where I also love mountain biking, which can be crazy enough with vision. But I've been able to continue to ride by using a guide that rides very close in front of me to talk me through the trail. And, I definitely have continued to ride even more technical trail. And where I live in San Diego, it's very hilly and very rocky. And just through like blood, sweat, and tears, have learned to keep riding. And the person talks me through the trail, and as many of you could imagine, like all I can really make out is just kind of like their shape or their blob in front of me, and really nothing else helpful of the trail. And I think it's amazing just to be involved in any sport or hobby that teaches you how to persevere and to adapt in an environment that is fun for you. Because like mountain biking, playing hockey, or learning to surf, whatever it is, like it's very hard and can be super frustrating, but it's also really fun. And I feel like it helps grow your mindset for when you are, at school, at work, whatever it might be. I think it helps you just really build that mindset, which I've found to be really important. Um, and so it's just been amazing to keep doing those things, and to, in my work now, I'm able to connect that to my passions and hobbies. Is something that's very special to me. And I've even gotten into using cameras since my vision loss, as I've never was into really taking pictures or videos before my vision loss, but I got a GoPro camera right at the beginning of things, and was very quickly hooked to the idea of clearly capturing the world around me and sharing that with other people. Just to go on a trip, take a picture, come home and look at it and zoom in on my screen was a powerful feeling. And it's been really special to get better and better at it, better at photography, making videos, using better cameras, and really just pushing the limits with accessibility. Because I really believe that technology is just going to keep getting better, to where it's like, I think we need to shift our perspective, where it's like, there's not really, there is something wrong with us. We do have a disability, but it's not negative or it's not bad. We just do things different. And I have to stop myself from looking from a sighted perspective that I used to have, to where if something's wrong with me, I need to fix it. And it's like, no, I just have to do it a different way. And I feel like using cameras and helping with accessibility for them and pushing it as just gives me hope for greater employment for people in our community, and just better access to life around us. And I'm just thankful for all that I feel like all that my vision loss has taken away from me is a beautiful exchange for all the things that I have now. And lastly, like I think a culmination of all those doubts that I had at the beginning of my vision loss. How am I going to go to school? How am I going to get a job? Could I play sports? Could I get married? Like, it's amazing seeing all these things answered. And at the end of it all, like I'm going to get married in a couple weeks here, which is just an amazing accomplishment, or not an accomplishment, just like amazing gift and a blessing to be able to do. And I feel like my vision loss has just made it that much more special, going through it all. So thanks for everyone for listening to that. And I hope it can encourage someone, because I know how much other people's stories have impacted my life.
Okay, first of all, congratulations. You're getting married. That's awesome. Awesome. Very lucky girl. I'm going to say very lucky girl.
And a luckier guy too.
And a lucky guy. Yeah. So much going on. You just graduated college, as you said. There was an article that was shared in the Facebook communities with that sang all your praises and all of the awards that you received with graduation. So congratulations on that, and a wedding coming up. Wow, just a lot going on. And Blake, for someone being your age and everything that you just said is just amazing. The insight and perspective you have is just admirable. And thank you so much for sharing some wonderful pieces of advice and words of wisdom that I think people who are watching are going to really get something out of. I agree with you. Pushing the limits, getting uncomfortable, creates the most rewarding experiences that you never thought would be able to happen when we are affected. And when slowly questions and doubts are questions are answered, doubts are dissipated, and all of a sudden you're doing. And I think Megan said, all of a sudden you're doing, and you've really explored so many avenues and have been successful at it, Blake. And thank you so much for sharing all that you just did. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Of course, appreciate the opportunity.
Yes. All right, so we're going to move on to a couple that have been very active in the LHON California community. We have Jerry and Paul Lore, and they're going to speak as a couple and what that was like with Paul being affected at a later age, and Jerry's, Jerry being his sighted supporter, and how they've come through and managed to make it work between the two of them, and for Paul coming into the world of LHON. So Jerry and Paul, please tell us your living with LHON story.
Hi, I'm Paul Laurie.
And I'm Jerry Laurie.
So I'm 59 years old. Jerry and I live in Dublin, California, which is a suburb of the San Francisco Bay Area. And we've been married 33 years. I was affected with LHON about 2.5 years ago. In fact, my timeline is very similar to Megan's. And I have mutation 4171, which I understand is a rare one. So my journey with LHON started about 50 years ago, because I am probably, and I'll explain that a bit more, the fourth person in my family with LHON. About 50 years ago, my mom was 37 years old. My mom and dad had four children, and the 6 of us were living on the East Coast. And my mom started to lose her vision and have other neurological issues. And we were living outside of Washington, D.C., so Georgetown University was available for her to get care at. She saw lots of specialists, and in fact was even admitted and went through a series of tests and things. But in the end, she was given a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. Not uncommon. We've all heard that before. Fast forward a few years, we actually moved to San Diego to actually get my mom into sort of better weather, better living situation and everything. And my mom regained her vision. I'm not sure exactly how many years it occurred after the onset of what we eventually would learn was LHON, but her sight did improve, but many of her neurological issues did remain through the rest of her life. Now, fast forward to, I think, the mid 2000s, and a cousin of mine, a young cousin of mine, 17 years old, he started having vision issues and lost started losing vision in his right eye, and then shifting to the left eye. Kind of classic LHON situation, and was diagnosed with LHON, but never really, I don't believe, had any genetic testing. It was just based on really having
Symptomatic.
symptoms, and explaining to neuro-ophthalmologists throughout the East Coast of what had happened with my mom, and arriving at the LHON diagnosis. In between my mom's situation and this cousin's situation, there's a possibility that another family member who also had some vision issues probably had LHON, although it was never definitively diagnosed, and that family member passed away really without anybody knowing much about his vision issues. And then fast forward to December 2018 with my situation, and it really didn't take very long for my doctors, first my ophthalmologist, to really figure out that this was probably LHON. After, like many of us have experienced, after they cleared the whole possible brain tumor situation as a possibility for my right eye vision loss, it became apparent it was LHON. But the first genetic testing I had only tested me for the 3 most common mutations for LHON, and I obviously did not have one of them. So it actually took quite a while. I did not know my mutation until about 2 years into my LHON journey, personal journey. So anyway, my experience with going to an ophthalmologist first and then being referred to Stanford Byers Eye Institute was actually it all happened very quickly. And again, with the family history, I think it really accelerated me getting the diagnosis. But like so many others, it probably took roughly 9 more months before my vision loss sort of stabilized, and obviously went into from my right eye to my left eye. And so at this time, obviously, Jerry and I had been married for over 30 years, and I was working in a second career in the country's largest integrated healthcare company based here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I actually decided to take a medical leave of absence. And at the time, I think it was the right thing for me to do. This was hitting me obviously kind of hard, because I really thought LHON was something in my rearview mirror in life, because at then 56 years old, I really didn't think this was a possibility. I knew what it was after my cousin had been diagnosed. I remember talking about it with my optometrist. I was good about my eye care, but it really, I think
it was a surprise.
It was a total a total surprise. I did not know, as I know now, that somebody at 56 years old, male or female, could get the LHON. So anyway, I really focused after a little bit of few months of self-isolation.
It wasn't that long.
Yeah, it probably wasn't that long, but I did focus on technology, and I really wanted to get back into the workplace. But I also knew that my employer was telling me that the position that I was in at the time I became affected, I wasn't going to be able to do that job any longer, and they were right. But fortunately, they did work pretty hard to try to get another position, and that did eventually come about, and I'll speak to that in a bit. But meanwhile, there were some really positive things that sort of happened to me during I'll call it the onset phase with LHON, and that is, of course, like many of us, and certainly Jerry was doing the same thing, which was researching as much as we could, and understanding medically what was going on, understanding what we could do to really live a fulfilling life with this condition and everything. So working for one of the largest integrated healthcare companies in the United States, I searched out what they might have about LHON, only to find out that there was just 2 things that popped up in the company's intranet search site, and the 2 things were kind of an internal article and an external, like a member-facing article about an employee who had LHON. So I decided to call that person, and it's one of the best things I really could have done, because what that situation did for me was, first of all, he sort of became my early mentor, my early LHON mentor, and it also really catapulted me into the LHON.org support community, or the LHON community. He connected me with Lissa. He connected me, obviously, with LHON.org, and so much advice and guidance and knowledge, and just was just a really great turning point and one of the most positive early things that happened to me. And so with that, I think that, and certainly with Jerry's motivation, I really started focusing on some of the additional positive things that happened, getting connected with the California Department of Rehabilitation, getting connected with the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind, and taking full advantage of programs that they offered, both, obviously the vocational rehabilitation situations, and also the orientation and mobility. I never thought I was going to have to be a person who would use a white cane, but lo and behold, another great thing that happened to me was Lighthouse for the Blind has the Enchanted Hills camp, and I went to basically an adult blind camp. And that really helped me arrive at a point of acceptance of what this is all about. And, the fact that I just got such a great saturation of independent living skills and technology and I was hiding the fact that I was having what I didn't know until I went to Enchanted Hills camp was called Charles Bonnet syndrome. And I was hiding that because I just didn't, I think I didn't even tell Jerry for probably a month or more into, some pretty weird situations with that. And yeah.
So he said earlier that with my motivation, that's probably not the correct word. I think it's similar to what Chaz mentioned with his wife. Paul was trying to adapt. He was trying to figure out, he's an analyst by nature. It's just kind of the way his brain works. I'm a fixer. I don't wait. I don't analyze. I go out, I figure out the rules. I figure out what's available. I figure out what the tools are, and I sign him up. It didn't matter that he wasn't ready to be signed up. It didn't matter that he was still adapting. I was like, nope, there's these computers that talk. There's things you can put on your head, like VR goggles that can see for you. There's, I had him at meetings for demos for iris vision. I made him go to Berkeley Eye Vision to get all the updates on everything. I'd already looked into DOR. There were already bump dots all over our house. He didn't even know what they were. So we approached everything differently. And the poor guy, if he even said one little thing like, oh, I'm kind of having a problem here. We were talking about it earlier. I need to write a note, and it takes me, a giant piece of paper and a huge pen, and it takes up the entire sheet of paper, my note. And he's always been kind of very environmentally conscious, and he didn't like the idea that he was going to use up an entire forest trying to write somebody's phone number down. So I'm like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? So I search out on the internet. I try to figure out what we can do. Well, that was getting close to the early days of COVID, and suddenly you're seeing kids working from home. Well, what do they use? They use little whiteboards with dry erase markers, big, thick dry erase markers. We have 9 whiteboards around the house with big, thick dry erase markers, and they work great.
That was one of the great sort of joint solutions. I think, I was worried while I was at Enchanted Hills camp, I received a call from my employer basically saying, hey, we think we have a great situation for you to come back to if you'd be willing. It's probably, it's more administrative than probably you're used to, but this could be a really good fit. And I was thrilled at the opportunity, and I took it. But all of a sudden I was like, but how am I going to, and then, you could almost fill in the blank. And I kept doing that with Jerry, and she really helped me work through a lot of these things. Like I knew that in this job, I was going to have to, quickly write down somebody's medical record number or membership, right, or somebody's photo, whatever. And it was just going to be a quick thing while I, while I went to the computer, now with using assistive technology and everything that I had successfully gotten trained on, and but that I needed to be able to just get rid of it real quickly too, and not be so wasteful. And boom, she came up with these nine, I'd say they're about 9 by 12 whiteboards that really they're not the flimsy ones, and I just use them all the time for work. And it was just one of the best. I think it's just one of the best examples of a sort of a solution that we really worked through together. But so I think the next thing we would talk about as a couple here is really the change of responsibilities that sort of, right, unless there's anything else I forgot. No. So I've
driving.
Leave this to you. Yeah, driving's the one. Right?
Driving's difficult. And Paul has always loved to drive. He doesn't just drive, he loves to drive. So he's driven all over Europe. He's driven all over the US. He's the guy who, when other people say, oh, I'll go, but I'm not driving, Paul's always the driver. So for 33 years, I've driven back and forth to work, and that's pretty much it. I haven't driven anywhere else, really. And I'm the navigator. So one of the early things we did, because it had already been planned out when Paul's started to lose his vision, was we took a trip with 3 other couples to France. And originally Paul was going to be the driver. Well, Paul's not the driver anymore. So I offered to be the driver. And I thought, that'll be okay. I've never driven in Europe. I've barely driven around home, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Because one of the other people offered to be my navigator, because I knew I didn't want to navigate and drive. Except she was very taken by the countryside and the things we're looking at and pretty much everything else. And she quickly lost track of what was happening. So I was trying to drive and navigate, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle for both of us. At one point, they actually closed the road where our little house we had rented was, and they were repaving it, but they didn't put up a sign saying they were repaving it. So I drove down the road and got us trapped. We couldn't turn around. We couldn't do anything. We're just stuck in this little space. And there's a gentleman yelling at us in French, and there's French cats running everywhere. And it was just kind of not the best experience, and probably not one that I would recommend as a big travel trip in your early onset. But we also just got back from Cabo, and we had a wonderful time, but we're 2 years in. So we're better, and we're better at walking, which is just something simple. We like to walk, in the neighborhood and do things together. And I've heard other sighted supporters say the same thing, that you develop sort of a shorthand. Well, I was going to tell you about my day, Curb. I saw Susan today, step, branch. There's, as you're walking, you remind the person that maybe they can't see there's a curb. Maybe there's 4 steps down. Maybe there's a branch that's going to whack them in the head. And you get just really used to it. It doesn't even affect your conversation, really. It just comes out. Whereas in the early days, I'm grabbing his arm and hauling him around and pulling him one direction or the other. But you get better. You get much better. And when we were on our trip just recently, just a few weeks ago, you find when you go to other countries that they don't have as much adherence to what we consider, the Americans with Disabilities Act. There are staircases with absolutely no railings that just drop you to the ground. There are all kinds of things that are a little bit dangerous. So you have to be aware of that. You have to help your person be aware that, okay, you're going to want to stay to the inside because the outside is just a direct fall. And we were traveling with 2 other people, and it was very amusing how quickly they picked up the shorthand, because they had never traveled with us before. They'd never really hiked with us before. And I think it was 2 days in, and they were like, oh, and should we go to that ship, Curb? Should we walk up that, 4 stairs, but you get better.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think we're moving into kind of an interesting transitional period for us I think for two reasons. One is coming out of the pandemic, and the second thing is I have decided to kind of take an early retirement and really try to focus on probably just trying to improve my or increase my chances of maybe getting some improvement in my vision since I have this 4171 mutation, which they say, and obviously my mother is evidence of this, can have some improvement in within the first 5-year window. And so I've just decided to do that. And I think it's going to be an interesting transition for two reasons. One, how do I fulfill my days now? And two, we're going to be spending a lot more time, together. But I think it's going to lead to a lot more travel. And
now that we've had a successful trip, and we're very happy about it. And we took the trip as sort of a sample, and as we were traveling, we noted things, because Paul also wants to do some traveling on his own.
Yep.
And we were like, okay, so here's the immigration form with print so tiny I can barely read it. What do we do about that? So we just started making notes of things where we're going to have to give some thought. How's it going to work? And it's interesting because none of it even feels mildly insurmountable. It's all very, very doable, very possible. And everything has been very possible. Paul hasn't really changed much what he does. There are some things that I now take over, like driving, but there's some other things that it's just easier if I do it. In the early days, he kept trying to do it and it would take twice as long and we'd usually end up breaking something. But now he knows what he's doing and what he's not doing. And he's still up on ladders every weekend. We pick lemons together. We have a large lemon tree. And I'm at the bottom going, okay, more to your right, more to your left, reach up. You can probably feel it touching the top of your hand, So our lives haven't really changed that much. I think our communication may have gotten a little better.
Yeah, I think communication is really key. I mean, it's obvious and evident in any any relationship. Doesn't matter what stage it's at, but it is paramount with I think with any couple that's dealing with sort of a life-changing situation, like being affected, having somebody being affected with LHON. And I think we've done a really good job with that. I really do. So. Yeah. And so I think we're excited about the road ahead and really continuing to live with as a couple with LHON. And thank you so much for letting us kind of do this as a couples theme.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I just don't even know what to say. I loved listening to your story, and the way you have both coped individually and together just says so much. And the fact that you just are planning to travel, early retirement sounds always great to anybody. And that, like Blake had said, it's willing to get uncomfortable. Like Megan had said, it's one task at a time. And I think with the communication, it can make or break a couple. It's, without any medical issues, but when something big comes along, like you said, Paul, a life-changing diagnosis, man, it can make or break a couple. And the fact that you come at it from different directions, but yet still come together in the end to make it work the best for both of you it's just wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing. I've gotten to know you guys from being part of the LHON California committee. And I just adore you guys and the way you work together, even on our calls when we have our committee calls. And thank you so much for sharing a little insight into your personal lives and your LHON story. I so appreciate it.
Thank you, Maria, for everything that you do for the LHON community, and you too, Lissa. I certainly owe, you a debt of gratitude, Lissa, for sort of helping both of us as a couple getting to where we're at now.
Well, it's wonderful. And I have to agree, my kids and my partner, they've gotten to say, curb, step, flat, up, down, it's very natural. And I do take notice, and I make it a point to actually say thank you, because, they have taken the time to make that part of their language, if you will, now. And sometimes they just offer to help with knowing I'm going to have a difficulty with something, they just offer to do it. And I've had to learn to say, okay, you can do it for me. Yeah, that's hard too, right, Paul?
Right.
So
that is absolutely true.
It's hard giving that up too. But at some point you realize, they could get it done in about a minute. It would take me 15. So, and I love your whiteboard idea, by the way. I may adopt that. And I have a feeling people watching this at the conference, I think whiteboards there's going to be a peak in on Amazon. I have a really large one in my office that I write on, but the smaller ones, I never thought about that. So wonderful tip for that helpful as well. Yes. So that concludes our 2021 LHON panel. And I just want to personally thank everyone for being willing to share their LHON stories, their personal journeys, if you will, after being diagnosed with this disease. And it's always a wonderful thing to let others know that they're not alone in their journey. They're not alone in what they go through, and they're not alone with their thoughts and feelings when they are diagnosed or have a partner or a spouse or a son or daughter or, a relative of some sort, or a friend diagnosed with LHON. And that's why I love doing this panel, because every time we do this panel at the conference, people do get a lot out of it. And Megan said that she binge watched LHON panel videos when she was first diagnosed, and has expressed to me that they were extremely helpful for her to hear others talk about being diagnosed. So we are going to wrap it up, but we will be here live. If you're watching this right now on June 26th. We've just finished our panel, and we are going to be here for live question and answers. So stay tuned, and we are going to come back live. You may be able to ask any of us, including myself and our panelists, questions or comments that you might have about anything that they've spoken about, or anything you'd like to know more about. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll be here for live Q&A. Thank you. All right, everyone, welcome back. You just watched our panel with incredible speakers, some wonderful people who were willing to share their stories and a little bit of their life after being diagnosed, or having a spouse who was diagnosed. And we would love to engage now with chat. Any questions you have, please feel free to start putting things in the chat that Alyssa is going to let us know if there are questions or anything we can comment on. Raise the hand on the raise hand feature. We'll catch you that way. So please, we'd love to be able to open this up to everyone that's watching and have a conversation like we would do if we were live at a conference, but we'll wait till next year for that. So let it rip.
So Maria, I'm going to tell you that, so for people in the audience, if you don't know where the raise hand feature is, if you can get to the buttons on the bottom, the one on the far right is called reactions, and that's where it says raise hand. So if you do have a question and want to raise your hand, it'll make it easier to take the questions one by one. Also to the group, the first comment was, this is great. If I could hit the applause icon, I'd hit it 10 times. So I'm going to agree with that. It's amazing. And you're getting lots of thank you for sharing the stories, very inspirational and helpful. Okay, so there's a question for Blake and Chaz. Let's see. The question is, our son, who is 13 and going through puberty, is now not wanting to talk much with anyone about being blind and is getting more frustrated than he was when he was younger. As young men, is there anything you can suggest to support him but not overstep as his mom?
I'd say
Great
you gotta
question.
let him have his independence. But you know, you gotta find ways to help encourage him to talk and be open about it. For me, I'm an open book, and I like talking, so it hadn't been hard for me to be open about it, as most of the people in this community know who have met me. um, you know, it's just finding what works best for him and figuring out ways to help him talk about it and learn how to explain it where people can understand what's going on. And you know, I'm always open to help talk to him if I can help talk through anything for y'all as well. So um, that's about what I have to say.
Yeah, no, I totally see where you're coming from on that. I'm not sure when he was diagnosed or started having vision loss, but it sounds like it had been at least a couple years maybe. But um, I think from the outsider's perspective, it's very hard to understand like just the processing, because for me, like it wasn't emotionally wasn't that hard right away getting diagnosed, or even like the first year. You just I was like junior and senior in high school and just kind of put my head down and kept going. And it wasn't until a couple years into it that it was extremely challenging processing and realizing that this is normal, this is the rest of my life, um, type thing. And I wasn't 13, but I think being a middle school teenager, becoming a teenager, it's a big changing point in life where a lot of your friends might be doing certain things that he can't. And sometimes it's hard when people just, you know, everyone around you might just want you to be, just to cheer up or everything to be okay. But I would just encourage to like, just deeply understand where your son's at and meet him where he's at, to just try to understand those emotions, and know that there's just stages to processing it and he'll get through it. Um, and I think most importantly, probably just making sure that he has friends around him that are there for him as well, because maybe he feels more comfortable sharing with them. But vision loss takes years to to process through, so it just takes time.
Thanks for that. And again, let's see, the answer from the mom was thank you so much. When you said, Blake, that you realized this was for the rest of your life, that really hit home. And again, thank you for saying it from the person who asked the question. And again, if anyone else wants to put anything in the chat, I'll make sure that, our speakers our panelists can hear it. And if anyone wants to raise their hand to ask a question, you know, please use the that or you know, and we'll go that way. I'm being asked to get you guys to speak, please, on how to get past the can't do, even after being in the can do stage. We have someone whose loved one was affected in high school, truly prospered in college, but once the pandemic hit and they graduated at the same time, life hit hard, isolation, and not seeing how we could do life after college independently and knowing what to do, and doesn't really want to talk or discuss any aspects. Do you have any insights?
I'll jump in as like the college student as well. Um, I feel like college is interesting for any student with a disability, and the pandemic was kind of like make or break. Um, to, just to, if you were good at your technology, it was awesome and the best thing ever. If you weren't, it was extremely challenging. And it can be isolating even going to campus and not being able to see people around you and have great social interactions. Um, and then, with life after college, it can be extremely challenging as well, because we already are limited by certain things, and then it just more limitations. But I feel like it's important to shift the perspective where we should lean into those limitations and like see how they can create direction in our life, to where, it's really challenging. The pandemic's super hard, but hey, it opens up more work from home opportunities, to not have to worry about driving to work, which was helpful for me for my first job out of college, um, which just graduated in December. So you just kind of have to like change your perspective on certain things and also realize like there's so much doubt that I've had to deal with where I'm like, how am I going to do this job? Could I do these tasks? People want to work with me? There's so much to wrestle through. Again, like the last question, that just takes time to go through because it really brings out a lot of insecurities that you have, and it's super humbling. I've just experienced that in so many ways. But on the other end of it, you come out like with a stronger character and more knowing your identity. And at the end of the day, becoming a better employee because there's so many things everybody can't do, and nobody tries to define themselves by that. But all of a sudden, when you have a physical disability, it becomes the center focal point. But you just kind of have to accept there's a lot we can't do, but change your perspective with certain limitations. So.
Thanks for that. There's another question in the chat box about my husband was diagnosed in November, and I was wondering if any of you use the wearable technology, and if so, what do you find best? Of course, I know each person is different.
So I demoed the a wearable technology,
Iris Vision.
Which Iris Vision. And I think for me, it might have been a little too early on in the onset phase of LHON to really appreciate what it can do. And I haven't revisited any of that type of technology, but early on, it wasn't going to be for me. I think
it worked. It was one of the first times actually when he was demoing it. He's like, "Oh, I can see your face. I haven't seen your face in a long time."
Yeah.
And we could see a Warrior game, which was interesting. They had a Warrior game on. We're big basketball fans, but it's big, it's cumbersome and awkward. And
if you can get over that. I also didn't think that it was going to be for me the right the right fix and complement for working. It wasn't. I was still going to have to use assistive technology at work. With the computer, it wasn't going to eliminate that. It wasn't going to make me the exact same, sort of the exact same employee I was before I had the vision loss. So it wasn't right for me at the time. But obviously we're all different, and it's what do you want to achieve using that type of technology, that wearable technology. Obviously, you're not going to be able to drive with it. I don't think there's any states that allow for that yet. It's so. I think it depends on really what you want to gain.
I'll chime in here. This is Maria. We did have a pair of Iris Vision glasses at one of our conferences a couple of years ago, and we actually had the product there and allowed people to try them out. And everyone who was affected that put them on could see. And they were shocked, amazed, in tears of joy, looking at their parents, looking at their spouse. And it is really, really good. I've tried a pair of Iris Vision on pretty much every year since they came out at a local assistive tech conference. And yes, I can see down the aisleway. I can see colors. I can read a business card. Again, it's all this adjustment. And there's also another similar Iris Vision is Patriot. And it's almost identical. They're the way they work as far as the focusing and things are just a little different and what they can do. But they are very unstylish. It's like wearing a pair of like a scuba mask. It's kind of like that for anyone who doesn't know. And it's actually a phone. If you imagine putting a phone horizontally and putting that in front of your eyes in a goggle form. I found that if I was still watching my kids' sports, orchestra, symphony performances, things of that sort, I probably would have invested in them. But for now, I'm just not sure, like Paul said, how much would it really help me in my day to day? So that's a little bit more about the Iris Vision goggles, but I really encourage everyone to look them up online and get a little bit better feel for what they actually are. Does anyone else have any wearables they
Yeah, I actually tried the eSight and had a very, very similar experience. So, just bulky and cumbersome and really didn't take
Yeah.
me to the next level of where I wanted to be.
Right. Cost benefit analysis, I think, was another big part of it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Iris Vision is actually on the cheaper side of assistive technology, but no, eSight is way up there. And for the most part, I'm not going to say for everyone, but for the most part, eSight doesn't work very well for people with LHON vision loss. I've tried again eSight on for years and years, every year that they've been at this conference, and I just keep hoping maybe this year what the changes and the updates they've made, maybe it'll work. And it just doesn't, just not enough to invest thousands of dollars. So that, and eSight does get brought up in our groups every now and again. So, but that the consensus is that the screen size is so small and we need things big. So it just doesn't work as well as we all, of course, would hope it would.
Great, thanks. And there's a couple questions for Megan. One person was curious if you'd be comfortable sharing your age, and a different person was asking, with everything that you've accomplished and you're so inspirational, does it encourage you to have kids even if you pass along the mutation?
Sure. Thanks, Lissa. Sorry for missing out on my age. I am 36 currently. I was diagnosed at the age of 35. No, I couldn't imagine passing this on to somebody else. So yeah, that's my answer there.
That's fine. And then Chaz, there's a question for you asking curious what kind of work you were doing when you lost your sight and how you and your employer dealt with it after you became affected.
So I actually managed real estate properties for a trust department at a bank in Lubbock. And from the beginning of my appointments, I just kind of kept them in the loop what was going on and that my vision was getting worse, but that we had no answers. And I was upfront and honest with them from the get-go and knew that they would be there and help me whatever they had to do. And then when we moved to Kansas City for my wife's job and I had to start finding new jobs, once I got an opportunity, I was able to tell them about my scenario. And they provided me with two 34, 36-inch monitors that I can still operate on pretty good with Zoom text, magnifier, things like that. And everyone's just been a great help, and they want to help you be successful is what I learned.
Thanks, Chaz. One person is chiming in that their son tried out several wearable technology and found the Iris Vision was the device he preferred, and he used it initially, but has not in several months. That is actually something I've heard from folks, that everyone gets all excited and then they use it and then they don't. There's another wearable called Patriot, and there is somebody in the community who recently got it and is very excited about it. It seems to be very similar to Iris Vision. So I will at least mention that Patriot is another eyewear device to consider. Someone is saying, well, all the panelists have some vision. Do any other participants have only limited light perception? Maybe Maria, I'll throw this your way because you probably know more people in the community than anywhere else.
Well, I have heard of a very small, maybe, you can count on one hand, people who have maybe just light perception to no vision, which is rare for LHON, but I don't know if they have something else going on that limits their vision, that's maybe just undiagnosed, or they already had issues with their vision before they were affected. So I don't know of anyone in the community that only has light perception, except for, like I said, just maybe 3 or 4 people I've heard have, light perception or no vision at all. And again, I don't know what else is going on with them in their vision. So it could be something else too. But for the most part, most everyone has their peripheral. It may not be clear. It may be snowy, grainy, more blurry, as opposed to some folks' peripheral is very clear. So, and that also depends on the person as well.
That's great. So Maria, I think we're running out of time, and I think the chat box is empty of questions. So
Okay.
I think this is a good time to wrap it up and give everyone a 10-minute break before we come back at the top of the hour for our third and final session. Thank you all so much. As always, an amazing opportunity to hear from a range of people about living with LHON. Thank you all so much. And we will see you all for the next session starting in about 8 minutes. And you're welcome to stay here or log out and come back in. But we'll see you in just a few minutes. Thank you all so much.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.